lines you can see in this image are wires, and the strange cylinders at the sort of on the right-hand side. See, there's a number of cylinders floating in the air. They're all resistors, and you can see by the colour bands in them. Oh, thanks for circling that. I should have circled that myself. But you can also see there's actually another set just behind this board over here as well. So we actually have a couple of sets of resistors on this circuit. And the reason there's a set of resistors is that each of these wheels of resistors can turn around so that one resistor is connected into the circuit. And so it's quite a big circuit. This is actually part of a team-based game called Circuit Wars. And at the start of the game, students are assigned into their teams. As teams, they have to complete a quiz using the SLOODLE quiz. So that gets done in Second Life. And the quiz is asking them to answer questions about oscillators and circuit theory. And the better they do at the quiz, then gives them more opportunities to try out different things in this 3D game, in this 3D sort of circuit design game. So, slightly roundabout, they'll need to have done some learning before they come in, how well they can remember some of the important theory that underlies circuits, then gives them more opportunities to use trial and error when it comes to actually completing different tasks. And so what gets set is in the boards at the back, target values tell them what they're trying to set the output of the circuit to reach, and actual values tell them the actual output of the circuit that they have designed. So it's team-based, it uses the quiz, but then drops them into this environment where they get to change parts of the circuit, and they really, as well as needing to know about the different resistor values, they need to remember some of the basic math that underlies how electronic circuits like this, so that they can try and calculate what the result is going to be from their chosen circuit. I'm not sure if this one is publicly available yet. I know there's a paper in press, but it is also, so I'll try and look for the SLOODLE at the end, if it's been published. So it really is it's very 3D, it's very team-based, it's very game-based. It's also using the knowledge that they've gained. And I have to say, the people at Ulster have actually really extended this quite impressively in that it's actually linked to a particular hardware setup, so that when you change the circuit here, it actually means that the actual values come from some physical hardware, where it actually sets up the circuit that's been designed here in Second Life by the students, sets up that circuit and does the actual test and presents the actual results from the actual the physical system, which is quite impressive. Yeah, I think they've been doing quite a bit of experimenting with inputs and outputs from real-world systems. So they've also got previously explained a washing machine simulator, for example. Gives you a virtual washing machine in Second Life, but you also have a miniature electronic washing machine that you experiment with on the desk. Hi, Mike. Yeah, I mean, I think some of the effort or build here is currently quite high. I think where there's going to be more value is some of the things that, for example, in online learning, it's sometimes more difficult to do online learning with some circuits and simulations. if students don't have access to them. So potentially what this is doing is saying you have access to this, but you can also do this over the internet, so you don't actually need to have all the hardware set up to enable groups to work with this. So I think there does have to be some kind of advantage or some gain to make this worthwhile, because I think there's quite a bit of work gone into this. Now this is obviously partly justified because they're just sort of exploring what's possible, so it's partly a research activity. But yeah, you would hope there's going to be some kind of gain in this if you've got to put in a lot of work to creating something that's very bespoke and very custom. As soon as you start doing something bespoke and custom to a very particular situation, then you do get it does become very time intensive, and it's not something that you could do normally as part of a normal module as an individual instructor. You really need a lot of expertise to develop something like this. And this is really, I think, kind of brings me to the end of what I really want to say, which is simply that what we're doing just now is exploring the relationships between complementary technologies of the 3D virtual world and the more 2D web technologies. And as applies to assessment in Second Life and OpenSim, I think it remains a very open and I think still largely unexplored possibility space of exactly what you can do, because it just seems so open. But a big challenge is the lack of any built-in tools to support assessment. With SLOODLE, what we're trying to provide is a range of basic tools that support a number of assessments, but it's always interesting to see how people take a basic tool but then apply it in a way that you hadn't expected. And so when Jeffrey did visit University of West of Scotland last year, or earlier in the year, it was interesting to see how he had been using the Moodle quizzes and the sort of SLOODLE quizzes with building the quizzes and the content into particular spaces. And so it's always nice to see what other people are doing with SLOODLE tools, because in a sense, what we've often generally provided is fairly basic tools that just do fairly specific tasks, but being able to build those into a rich 3D environment and set up an activity so that students encounter things in a set order or different way means that it suddenly becomes much more open, much more than just a multiple choice quiz tool, for example. Yeah, and I think I've not mentioned OpenSim much at all in this quiz, but much at all in this talk till now. But I think OpenSim is going to be more interesting in the future. Partly, I think a lot of the people at Linden Labs have increased the prices for Second Life, and there's a degree of lock-in with Second Life, and people are looking for a more open alternative. And with OpenSim, we're going to see much more ability for people to create a complete 3D environment and then zip that up on disk and then share it on their blog or deposit it into a repository somewhere. So that's really, I think, I'm really hoping that's going to help improve the sharing of 3D content. I think for us it creates our own challenges in that how do you create a really reusable learning object in OpenSim so that when you unpack it, you can quickly configure it to use your Moodle instead of someone else's Moodle. So there are a couple of challenges there, but I think a lot of possibilities. And that's me. Thank you.
Okay, Daniel, thank you very much. That was great. That was a really good introduction to SLOODLE. So if people haven't had a look at it, I think you'll certainly find they'll go and have a look at it now. What I might do, just while we continue having a bit of a discussion, I'll just put the survey up. And so the survey should be appearing on everyone's screen now. So before you go, if you wouldn't mind just filling that out. It's only a short one. Shouldn't take very long, and we can continue the discussion. One of the comments I'd probably make, Daniel, is probably that last point that you had up on your slide about the built-in tools for assessment. And that's obviously been one of our, probably the things that we were most interested in, is exploring how we could join the different tools that people are starting to use, because I still see this as a major problem, and especially the people who use all the Web 2 stuff. We've had, we certainly had visitors here to our university who, come and tell you all these wonderful Web 2 tools, but they're all separate. And it means you have to have separate accounts. It means you have to log in for many of them separately. It means if you do something in one of them, then of course that the content there doesn't appear in another one. You can't reuse the content in another area. And I think just in terms of the practicalities about how we go about doing our teaching and how students actually go about doing their learning, we don't want 10 different systems that we have to log into all the time and do separate things in each of those. So I think the more we can bring these things together, the more useful the tools then become. So I'll stop there and see if anyone else wants to make any comment on that. But certainly that's one of the really big things that we've been particularly interested in looking at in the transforming assessment side of things here in Adelaide. If anyone wants to make any comments, please just take the mic.
Right, let me just say, I'm looking up the Circuit Wars URL just now.
Thanks, Daniel, for that. So those visitors that we've got in the webinar today, are there any comments that you would like to make or any questions you'd like to ask? Not sure if that's people trying to talk or not. Certainly nothing's coming through on my headphones if you think you're talking. But perhaps if you want to talk, just put your hand up while I just make a couple of other comments. I think the thing that I've been really impressed with the SLOODLE set is that it gives you a basic set of tools, and then you can use your imagination about putting them together to do things, and that's one of the things I really like about them. And it's also, where people have thought about, well, what types of things would you actually want to do inside Second Life? Because I think, Daniel, you made the comment early on with the very first example that you showed. Sure, you could just do that easily in Moodle. For some of those things, you wouldn't have to go into Second Life and do that. But the point is that if you can do those sorts of things, then you can do other things in Second Life. And it also means that we can compress this idea of the time separation is one of the things I've talked about, the time separation between learning activities, assessment tasks, feedback, and then the next assessment task or the next learning activity that the student has to do. And so if you can keep them all in the same environment, in this case a virtual 3D world, and then time compress all those activities, then you keep the flow going. And again, just using those, that's a sort of term that game designers would use, to don't disrupt the flow. When someone's engaged, you don't want to stop them in their engagement. And I think that's exactly what we do in the way we traditionally deliver our content to students. So I'll stop talking now and seeing if anyone else wants to make any comments.